Hey, hello. This is Dave, Joey Dendron's real name. Sorry, this is just a quick walkthrough of Gene Genie, which is the Reaktor ensemble that I made that produced all the sort of percussion loops that you liked. So, like, Reaktor's like a massive subject, right? So I can't, like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to sort of explain everything about Reaktor. I kind of bounced off Reaktor because it was so complicated, and that was back in the day when it was simpler to get started than it is now. Um, but I can sort of show you, like, Gene Genie, this little thing, and then maybe if you feel like it, you can sort of hack it, replace the samples in it, start messing around with it, replace components of it, and maybe that'll be a way to get started in Reaktor. If we're lucky, but if not, at least you might get some of your own loops out of it actually. All right, let's have a go. I'm recording this in OBS, and I'm not an OBS master at all, so forgive me if this goes tits up. Right, let's have a go. So I'm gonna go in my Ableton VSTs, and here we go, Reaktor 6, drop it on a MIDI track. And one of the complicated things about Reaktor is that, like, the Reaktor VST is kind of a shell for all of the for all of the ensembles that you can load inside it, all the blocks racks that you can load inside it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the Gene Genie ensemble. Right, and I've got it in my Reaktor user library. In the ensembles, I've got a folder called Sound Generators, and here's like Gene Genie. And I play with it every sort of couple of years, so this is me messing around with it, customizing it in 2021. And here's the version that I think is probably the closest to the one that made those loops. So here it is. All right, so what's going on? This whole thing, actually, let me close that for now. Let's get rid of some crap. This is a Reaktor ensemble, right? And an ensemble is made up of one or more instruments. So here's an instrument. It's a little sampler. Just a super simple little thing. And I should say that, like, anything in like this demo, you could make it in Max for Live, really. So if you're sort of struggling, or like Reaktor doesn't feel like a comfortable environment for you, but you do want to get going with you're making your own sort of instruments by patching, do think about Max for Live, because there's nothing here you couldn't do with Max for Live. It's just I don't understand Max for Live. I can't be bothered learning it. And I know a little bit about Reaktor, so anyway, so this is a little sample synth. It's got a really simple envelope for the amplitude, for the volume, just attack, and it says release, but I've got a feeling that might be decay and release or whatever. Then it's got a super simple filter. It's a low pass. It's got I put a saturator in it just to give it a bit of grit, I guess. And then because there's a saturator in the path, I put a little gain knob in it. And then I put just a dead simple high pass filter, for reasons that might become clear later. And then for some reason there's a whole another output thing here. I don't know why, maybe I could have just changed the range of this thing and it would have been all right. And this is the sort of this currently selected sample in a Reaktor sampler module. All right. So that's an instrument, a Reaktor instrument inside of the big ensemble. Uh, here's another couple of instruments. This is called Spring Tank, and it's an old Reaktor instrument that simulates a spring reverb. And I think it sounds alright. I'm not an expert on spring reverbs, but I quite like the sound. Also, I quite like that you've got these knobs that you can play with in real time that you can't with a lot of spring reverb. Well, certainly spring reverbs in a like Ableton convolution reverb. You can't mess around with them in real time. And I've hacked it. And this is something that you might want to think about getting into with Reaktor. You can open any Reaktor ensemble or instrument that you find in a Reaktor user library. You can open this one, Gene Genie, if you want. Or you can open any that you find in the factory library that comes with Reaktor. And you can edit it. Here's the edit button here. And that means you can hack it. So I've done hacks. I don't know if you know Reaktor Monarch. It's like their Moog Model D emulation, and it's done in Reaktor. And I think there was some limitation, right? Like either the cutoff frequency didn't go high enough, or blah 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 blah. And so I hacked it. I was able to go inside the instrument, sort of figure out at a kind of simple level what was going on. Maybe it was a pitch bend range, and I was able to change that instrument to sort of closer to what I wanted, what I needed. And I've done it to Spring Tank here. What I've done is I've put a control here that says Gene Genie, which is actually screen bit up here, gets to control the mix of the reverb. Right, so that hopefully I'll tell you what that means in a minute. And then I did another thing. I put a ducking envelope in it, and this acts a little bit like a sidechain compressor. So when it's getting an input, when a drum sound is going through, it ducks the reverb out of the way. And that's got just a little envelope. How the attack is how fast it ducks it down, and then hold is how does it hold on to that duct quietness for a bit. Decay is how quickly does it go back up. How long? 7 minutes already. Oh, you poor bastard. But anyway, you can get Reaktor instruments from wherever you get them, and if you can figure out how you want to hack them, you can hack them. And that's kind of how I got started with actually building in Reaktor, was opening instruments up and then just tweaking a little corner of them somewhere. So there's Spring Tank hacked, and through this knob kind of joined together with Gene Genie. Here's a compressor. What Gene Genie does, part of what it does, is it's very random, and that means that the output level can get a bit mental. So I've got a compressor here that kicks in at minus 34 dB. It's quite aggressive. And it's got a ratio of, Reaktor says 0.5. I think that's Reaktor language for a ratio of 2:1. I've given it quite a sort of soft knee, and it's not a hella aggressive compressor, but it's just there to sort of even out the signal level coming out of the ensemble a bit. Right, so whole thing's an ensemble, several instruments. There's a sampler, there's a spring reverb, pretend spring reverb, there's a compressor. And this is Gene Genie, right? And I'm going to press start now, and Gene Genie is going to sound unbelievably boring, but then hopefully we can sort of start to play with it. Right, so here we go. Right, there you go. So this is called gate sequence, and it's basically a bunch of you can put in a drum pattern basically, right? Loop length is how much, wow, what's 2 bars doing in there? Is how much of this sequence it plays in a loop. So if I go to 2 beats, that's just these 2 beats. 8/16. If I go to 1 beat, and if I go to 1 bar, right, and that 2 bar setting, that shouldn't even be there. That's the first bug. Well, it's the second bug actually, but let's not worry about that. Right, okay. And what's this? Restart every 2 bars. What does that mean? Right, well, imagine you set the loop length to something odd like 3/16. So it's just going to play that. It's going to loop round that 3/16. Diddle diddle diddle. Yeah, but every 2 bars in Ableton, it's going to be forced to restart from the first 16th. Right? I'm going to change that to 1 bar. It sounds a bit like a polyrhythm, right? Sorry, a polymetric rhythm. Okay. So, loops within loops. Let's go back to a bar. Where were we? Okay. So it's playing the whole of that sequence, 1 bar. It's restarting every bar, but I'm actually going to set it to restart every 2 bars. Okay, and you can swing, which you must because obviously Markle swings. Alright, and then what are these things about? It's called Gene Genie because inside it, it's got like a table of 1,024 random numbers. And the random numbers are used to control parameters like what sample are you playing? Is that pitched up and down? How's it transposed? What's the decay release on the envelope sort of affecting this? What's the velocity? Where's the filter cutting off? And how reverby is it? Right? But here's the funny thing. I'm going to change some of these now. And I'm going to change this. Oh. What's happening here is that the gates are playing a whole bar loop, and then every 2 bars it's resetting to the very start, right? But there are other loops going on, and there's a sample select loop which is only 2/16 long, and it's reading 2 random numbers from that table of 1,000 random numbers, and it's choosing a sample based on those numbers. And what that means is that I've got a bunch of random numbers in here, and I can have a bar long pattern, or I can have a 2 beats pattern, and then I can have other little sub loops making patterns So little sub loops, just 3 long. So it's going to play 3 samples, right? But they're going to sound like randomly selected samples, but it's going to be the same every time. Same 3 samples every time. And then when this light flashes, it's going to reset all of these little loops as well. So I don't have to have them all set the same. Right? Okay. Now here's the nuts thing. What I can do is if I turn this on, this button, every time it restarts, it's not only going to restart this sequence here and all of these little loops here, it's going to choose a random starting position in the table. So all these settings still apply, but all the random values that they work off will change. Which is, I don't know, it's a bit complicated. But what it means is, you can set up a gate pattern that you like, right? A rhythm that you find funky. You can swing it however you want. You can actually add a bit of randomness to it. Then you can set up a few, like, always simple numbers in here. 3s and 5s and 4s work pretty well. And then you can turn this on. You turn this on, and it just generates random sounding loops for you. Right, and the spring tank gives it a bit of space. Although you could put any effect, any Reaktor effect instrument in there. The compressor keeps it under control. And then you can put any Ableton effect after that. See what I mean? And then you can insert an audio track, set it to resampling. I don't know if this is going to work because of OBS. Yeah, it looks like it is. And just record it. Record a ton of it. If you do it this way in Ableton, the rhythms work. And then you can take that audio, pull that audio into any project, and just look in it for loops that you like. Whee! And already in here I've heard about, I haven't even changed the pattern yet. I could find different combinations of all of these. And just let it. If you find a loop that you really like, all you have to do is, well, you can create a snapshot. So let's have a go at that. So I'm here in Reaktor, and I've just clicked in the blank space. I'm gonna go over here to this. Oh, this is how you do it. And this is where you can save a snapshot of the ensemble. So in this drop down, I want to save a snapshot of the ensemble. I don't want to save a snapshot of Spring Tank I want to save a snapshot of the whole ensemble, and I'm going to add it, and I'm going to call it twang and snap. And now if I save the ensemble, that snapshot will be available to me next time I go in, right? And then if I wanted, I could go into Ableton, you know, maybe, I don't know how applicable this is, and automate the parameters and blah blah blah. So I could work that way if I wanted. Okay, how can you go about starting to make this yours? Right, I'm going to click edit. Bing, now we're editing the ensemble. I'm actually going to stop Ableton. Transport. And I'm going to click this little waveform button up here. And what that is showing us, it's showing us all of the samples that I've put into this little sample synth. So that this is where it is on my disk. The version I've uploaded, I've embedded the samples in the ensemble, right? So, but if you want, you can right click on a sample and you can replace it with a, you know, something of your own. Or I think I'm going to highlight the first one, and then I'm going to scroll all the way down here to the end of the list. I'm going to press Shift and I'm going to click the bottom one, and that highlights every sample. And then I'm going to click the remove button. Do you want to remove 128 samples? Yes, please. Bang, gone. And now, what can I do? I go files. No, flip that. I'm going to open a little file browser window. I've got a shortcut to my samples. Go on my drums, percussion, electronic techno. And I can just start. Move that over there. It's a little bit fiddly. See, I can start adding my own samples to that sample map. When I'm done, I can export that sample map as a Reaktor sample map. If that makes sense. So you can save your Reaktor sample maps on your disk. So if you've got a set of, you know, imagine you had 128 congas and bongos, right? You could have a sample map of all of those. You have a sample map of analog synth percussion. You could have a sample map, whatever, coming out of classic drum machines or whatever it is. So you can save your own samples. If you want, you can do it another way. Right, so I'm going to do a trick again. I'm going to go right to the top of the list, highlight the top one, scroll down to the bottom of the list, Shift, click on the bottom one, and I highlight them all. Then if I click on one of these embed checkboxes, then rather than it going out to your disk to get the sample and looking for it and freak out if it can't find it, it embeds the sample map data inside the little sampler module, which is at the heart of this Reaktor ensemble. Do you see what I mean? So if you want, you can make that ensemble more sort of self-contained, so that all of its samples are inside the ensemble. It's not having to refer to your computer's file system somewhere to find a sample. So I imagine, what the hell, 25 minutes? Jesus, sorry. So yeah, Reaktor's big and complicated, but one way of getting going with it is just to find a bunch of ensembles and record what they do. Classics actually that come with Reaktor. Sorry, my dog's whining. Are things like Space Drone. I hear that on techno records still. Screwwell. All sorts. Crypt, Polyplex. Metaphysical Function. That was a classic Reaktor ensemble for techno. So you can just find them, figure out how they work. Then you can start to hack them. One of the easiest way to do it is often if they have sample modules in them, you can replace them with your own samples. And obviously, you can use an ensemble to generate a load of samples with sort of flavour, grit, they're at weird pitches, they're doing weird things, they're through all sorts of effects. And then you can cut individual samples out and then put them back in, to Contact instruments or Reaktor instruments or Ableton sampler instruments, drum racks. And you can start to recycle, recycle your samples and your audio material. A little bit like, gardening. You turn little seeds, sample seeds, into other sample fruits, and then you get the seeds out of those fruits, and then you put them back into your garden. Anyway, now I'm really talking bullshit. So there you go. I hope that wasn't too horrific for you. Take care. Ta-ra.